Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Disney was able to not only hold its own against Universal this weekend. Universal, always a strong competitor. You know, we tend to think it's Warner Brothers versus Disney because they're so different. They really are like the yin and yang of studios in terms of their franchises. But Universal's always coming out of nowhere with the billion-dollar movies. But as of late, Universal has emerged as being particularly aggressive against the mouse, sensing weakness, not only in the the entertainment business in terms of theaters and like movies and shows, but I think even more so in the theme park business, which makes it personal for the mouse. So I'm sure that Disney has to feel good that they not only held their own this weekend, but even managed to undermine Universal just a little bit. All right, so yes, Disney definitely drank some of Universal's milkshake as the juggernaut Despicable Me franchise delivered one of its softer openings this holiday weekend. Despicable Me 4, which does have excellent audience scores, opened with just $75 million for the 3-day and $122 for the 5-day. But that 3-day puts it as one of the franchise's lower debuts. With no more animated movies for the entire rest of the summer, how did that happen? The next big animated movie is from Paramount in late September, Transformers 1, which I suspect might do actually quite well. The more they show me the trailer, even I as an adult am like, that looks okay, that looks pretty good. But it's still very likely with that wide open space that Despicable Me 4 will hit $1 billion or come close to it just like the rest of the franchise has. What about digital release? Don't worry. We're going to have an intense discussion about it. All right, but Illumination has got to realize that they missed the mark a bit here, and they're going to need to think of something really unique if they want to give the franchise another wind. Being the villain version of The Incredibles ain't going to cut it. I wonder how being the live-action version of The Incredibles is going to work for Marvel. We'll see. The Incredibles has quite the footprint at this point. Where's The Incredibles 3, Brad Bird? You're doing nothing else. Make it. I want to see these kids get a little bit bigger. All right, so what happened with Despicable? After Inside Out 2, I'm sure that Bob Iger is like, hey, Brad Bird, do you feel like making Incredibles 3? Huh? Want to start thinking about it if you haven't been already? All right, so what happened with Despicable Me 4? Well, obviously, Inside Out 2 was a big problem. The Disney mega hit is still doing substantial business worldwide and fell just 48% in its fourth weekend. I've decided that Anxiety is my Stitch or Mickey Mouse. I love Anxiety. They still don't have any good merch. I keep checking the Disney store and I'm like, why don't you have any good merch for this character? There's like Stitch and Mickey Mouse merch everywhere. I hope that someday soon, Anxiety will reach that level of merch. All right, so it fell just 48% in its fourth weekend. Inside Out 2 is truly a box office marvel. It's beautiful, look at it. Ridiculously ahead of all the other movies that came out this year, domestic and worldwide. So now one just has to wonder how many other movies will join it or if it will remain an anomaly. As for this summer, there are some good contenders, but as for this summer, just Twisters and Deadpool and Wolverine, I think have a shot at coming close to Inside Out 2's success. Passing Inside Out 2? I don't know about for Twisters. Who cares? We just want these movies to do well. We want the movie business to be successful. So if they just can get close to $1 billion or pass $1 billion, we'll be very happy. All right, now back to Despicable Me 4. Interestingly, it did not have hugely broad appeal. Once again, Latino and Hispanic moviegoers supercharged a film this year, but as some of you pointed out, while they're becoming formidable overall with all the genres, they've been very strong in the family space for a while now. Not only, of course, propelling Inside Out 2, but Super Mario Bros. Last year. The other demos for Despicable Me 4 were soft, and the crowd skewed overall pretty young. Pixar, with the right movie like Inside Out 2, can still bring in adults. So that's something for Despicable Me to think about. Pixar has been around for a very long time, so it's put Illumination's relatively new in comparison. So it does, I think the nostalgia factor still hasn't kicked in for them just quite yet. Also, there's no social media craze for this film like there was for the last Minions movie, which, come to think of it, might have distorted how much interest audiences still have in the franchise, versus just wanting to have fun with that craze. And that gave it a very big opening weekend which, I mean, I don't think I even saw Minions 2 its opening weekend, and yet there were still people showing. As I said, it made for a horrific viewing experience, but there were still people showing up to party thanks to the social media activity for that film and its subsequent weekends. Now, this studio vector TikTok account, I mean, what, if you weren't associated with the studio, who would upload nothing but vector videos? Although they do well. And also, I think Universal would be like, what are you doing, if they weren't behind it? But damn, Universal, that TikTok PR strategy is strong. Look at the numbers on these. That's amazing. There's a pocket vector fandom that we didn't even know about. Although maybe some of you are like, I love these TikToks, Grace. They're fantastic. Now, they tried to do kind of a similar getting dressed up to go to the theater thing, but everybody can get dressed up like they're going to like a special event. You know, everybody's got their dressy clothes for like the first craze, but it's a lot harder to find one of those orange suits. So no banana. All right, can Despicable Me 4 get to $1 billion or close to it? Let's discuss, because, the landscape is constantly shifting, especially with digital and streaming taking up a bigger and bigger chunk of the space. But yeah, we have a couple of comparison films. So as I said, let's discuss, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. While Universal is the leader in shortening the theatrical window, they started it! With Kung Fu Panda 4, they waited an entire month to drop the film on digital. The restraint. It used to be 3 months. But remember, Universal pioneered the 17-day window. They're like, if it's a clunker, 17 days. And it has served them well. But Kung Fu Panda 4 was not a clunker, and it took a month to get to digital. And when it got to digital, it was at 167 million domestic and still got about another 30 million in theaters, even though it had hit digital. So digital doesn't shut down theatrical business as one might have once thought that it would. That said, with Despicable Me 4 skewing so young, a beautiful holiday weekend. Wow, the outside was just calling you a name. And having just seen Inside Out 2, everybody just saw Inside Out 2, are more moviegoers opting to just wait for Despicable Me 4 on digital or maybe even down the road on Peacock. But note that Minions 2, which I guess is our comparison, that took 2 months to hit digital. Oh, Universal, how'd you do it? I'll tell you how they did it, because they were making money at the theater. By the time Minions 2 hit digital, they were at 355 million domestic. Despicable Me 4 is pacing about 20 million behind Minions 2 right now. So it was kind of slow out of the gate as well. But also, remember that Despicable Me is largely an overseas franchise. It doesn't even really need the United States. It does, but 75% of Despicable Me 3's $1 billion came from overseas. So, even if it's a little soft here, as long as it's strong overseas, that's all that really matters to Universal. All the money is good. As for the weekend's other new release, Maxine, a little bit more of a complex situation, a little bit of a wait and see, but it's not so hot out of the gate. Let's also discuss. So it failed to hit the 10 million Hollywood that had hoped that it would open with. And the audience scores are not great. I liked the film, as you know. It's a feminist film, and the reason I talked about that on social media is that there's certain groups in the audience and social media space that are just very upset with anything that's feminist. You can see The Acolyte had that problem. Barbie managed to sidestep it by being, surprise, a feminist movie, and just so good and so fun. But as I said, The Acolyte's been suffering. I've already seen, the same groups that have attacked The Acolyte getting ready to make Agatha Marvel's Acolyte, which makes me sad, and I hope that's not the case. Although, let's see. We haven't gotten to The Acolyte's numbers just yet. But I do feel that, that might have hurt Maxine just a scooch unfairly. But, I like the film a lot. But perhaps this trilogy and Mia Goth are niche, truly niche, meaning not for the mainstream. The most concerning thing here are the audience scores. And they're not even super bad if Midsommar, which we're going to talk about in a moment, which was Hollywood's comp for this film, that had a bad cinema score, but that's a horror movie. They always have C cinema scores. But for Maxine, to be just a B is disheartening. Because it means that of the mainstream moviegoers that did come to see the movie, neither the film nor Goth were able to win them over. And they came out not pleased. So that to me is troubling. And after a breakout hit with Civil War, A24 finds itself right back in niche territory, and not even their strongest niche territory. As I said, Hollywood had Midsommar as the comp for Maxine, both from A24, and Midsommar had opened with a little over $10 million for the long holiday weekend back in 2019. Although that movie opened on July 3rd to take full advantage of the full holiday weekend, whereas Maxine, for some reason, came out on July 5th and missed the 3rd and the 4th. Maybe it would have hit 10 if it had those 2 days. That is unfortunate. The audience scores weren't great for Midsommar either, and that did put Florence Pugh on the mainstream map. So maybe, just maybe, Maxine can still do the same for Goth. Midsommar went on to do just $27.4 million, but it fell just 44% in its second weekend. So we'll keep an eye on Maxine. I think Maxine is a long-term play. And so, I mean, it's not looking great so far, but it could turn out pretty good. Now, speaking of theatrical windows, there was some chatter, some fervent chatter, you might even say, on social media during the last week when it seemed to leak that A Quiet Place Day 1 would be hitting digital on July 30th. Also, a full month after release, which is pretty typical these days, as we were just discussing. And look, A Quiet Place 2 Day 1 fell 60% in its second weekend. Was it because the digital date came out? I don't think people, for the most part, are that tuned in, the movie-going public. I mean, if you want to see it, you're going to go and see it. Although maybe somebody's like, I heard the date and I said I'll wait. All right, I did a little Etrigan rhyme there. I got Kite Man screeners in advance. I'm not allowed to tweet about them until July 11th on Thursday. All right, so anyway, A Quiet Place Day 1, as I said, fell 60% in its second weekend. But it's almost at $100 million already. And the Quiet Place movies, they don't make it to $200 million. I mean, maybe this one would have, but I don't think so. And that has still 3 weekends to go before the July 30th drop date. So it would seem to me that the digital release date is actually perfectly scheduled and that Universal, what do you know, knows its business. So, I mean, these dates, they exist for a reason. So I think, everything's working very nicely for that film, in fact. You could always say, well, maybe it would have done better if the theatrical window wasn't known to be so short these days. I think it's fine. I mean, I guess that's a big, it is what it is. And I think everybody, I would consider A Quiet Place Day 1, it is the biggest debut for that franchise. I think that's a winner of a film for A Quiet Place, as we discussed last week. All right, Bad Boys 4 is also about ready to hit digital, right? It's almost done. At the theatrical, although is it? It has the smallest drop in the top 10. That's incredible. So Sony might keep it in theaters for a few more weeks. Maybe it's not done. I mean, what a return to form for Will Smith. I mean, he should really be thankful to his fans. And I believe that he is. He's always been thankful to his fans. But wow, they paid him back. That's incredible. Whoever saw Bad Boys 4, and I liked the movie too, but whoever saw it in theaters, you just saved Will Smith's career. And Kevin Costner, how about his career? I think he can breathe a sigh of relief. This is looking pretty good too. It's simmering. With Horizon only falling 50% in its second weekend, with all the doom and gloom that was out there. Some people felt Variety had a personal agenda against Horizon. But you would think for all the doom and gloom, it would have plummeted like 60 to 70, well, not very rarely do movies plummet that much in their second weekend, but it could have plummeted somewhere in the 60s. So the fact that it fell just 50%, there's a glimmer of hope here. The movie's numbers are, of course, still very weak, but it shows a pulse for the film. It ain't dead. And perhaps Costner is right. He said the theatrical release is just to make the movie seem like a big deal. Oh, it's a movie that played in theaters. But he says he really feels he's going to make his money, the 3-hour Western, on digital and in the ancillary market. Remember the ancillary market? We don't talk about it too much these days, but it's big. It's beyond the digital and streaming releases. It's when a movie plays in a hotel room, on cable, all those, TV rights, on an airplane. And somebody tweeted that Horizon, 3 hours again, might do really well on long flights. And I actually thought that was quite clever. Again, as I told you, I think it's a solid movie. And I actually talked to a friend of mine who saw it over the weekend and he liked it too. So I think there's an audience for it. And I think Horizon will hit digital pretty soon because part 2 is coming up in theaters in mid-August already. So Costner needs to try to build up his audience. So maybe the next movie opens a little bit bigger. The next one looks even better. And I think I can't wait to see that on a big screen, actually. As for the rest of the top 10, Angel Studios has just not been able to find another Sound of Freedom, but not for lack of trying. They've released several films over the past couple of months, but just not one of them has been able to hit in the same way. What do you think the difference is? While India's Kalki 2898, after a very good weekend last weekend, was able to remain in the top 10 despite a 65% drop. The Bike Riders is indeed ready for digital on Tuesday, and so is Garfield. We talked about whether or not Garfield should have gone digital over this holiday weekend, and I still think they should have, as I argued last week, and I was right, because sure enough, with Despicable Me 4 entering the marketplace and Inside Out 2 still there, Garfield fell 75% this past weekend. And finally, Kinds of Kindness fell back under 1 million despite further expansion, adding another 430 theaters. This movie is done. And with its very poor scores, both critic and audience, I think its awards chances are extremely slim as well. Yorgos Lanthimos' next movie will also feature Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons, by the way. And, I hope these actors don't forget the one for you, one for them rule, as they build their careers. Plemons in particular. Stone has 2 Oscars at this point, and she's had her commercial successes, so she really can do whatever she wants with the rest of her career. Whereas Jesse Plemons, I think, is still building. But maybe he wants an Oscar. We'll see. We'll see. Some of you pointed out that he did get recognition at Cannes. But anyway, art house projects. You're supposed to do art house projects, but then also some crowd pleasers. And as for Stone, while of course she can do anything she wants, I think it would be a shame for her to throw away the strong mainstream career that she had built. Also, if she's going to transition solely to art house projects, they got to all be winners. And so far they're not. So mainstream hits, they buy you some wiggle room in the artistic space. They give you a little bit of room to breathe and to make, maybe have a misfire here and there. But, the commercial films keep your career moving forward. What do you think? I know some of you are really big fans of Emma Stone's new career path. But then how did you feel about Kinds of Kindness? All right. Did you even see it? All right. Because these numbers are low. All right, due to the holiday, Nielsen is a bit being behind, and we only now have the numbers for the week right before The Acolyte dropped. If The Acolyte ratings drop like a little bit early in this week, we'll probably cover them maybe in a live stream instead of waiting for Movie Math next Sunday, because we're all wondering what they are. But nothing too exciting on this week. It's a real dud. It's the usual suspects that we've been discussing for the past few weeks, with Atlas doing respectable numbers for its first full week on Nielsen's charts. And Reba is back in the overall top 10. With originals, the numbers here are small. There's Eric, but you can see some other streaming services are breaking up Netflix's usual monopoly. Here's the movies chart, and Moana is the only other project besides Bluey that Disney Plus can get on any of these charts, but at least there's a lot of Hulu. Hulu's actually starting to do very, ironically, Hulu being available through the Disney Plus interface is helping it considerably, but Disney Plus is still struggling to get content on these charts. But starting with the next charts, that's when we'll get to June for real, like in earnest, and we'll be seeing how the big shows that dropped during June actually performed. Of the 4, they all kind of were controversial. I think House of the Dragon maybe wasn't so much controversial as slow out of the gate, but it ended up being a weird month. So I think we're all very interested to see how the ratings reflect, if they reflect that. House of the Dragon, by the way, hopefully audiences feel things pick back up with tonight's big episode. It's a big one! With Netflix's charts, some of you haven't been watching House of the Dragon when it drops because it's been so slow this season, but you might want to tune in tonight. I think you should. All right, with Netflix's charts, they have 2 solid hits in the movies category with that weird A Family Affair movie, and then Trigger Warning in its first full week. These numbers prove that big names can still do a lot for Netflix, and Netflix can still do a lot for big names. Big-ish names. Kind of big names. Once big names. I said it! With shows, Bridgerton has slowed down, although Nicole Kidman's still a legitimate star. But she makes weird career decisions. But I think that almost works for her, because you never know what she's going to do next. And she's consistently really strong. And she does have a lot of commercial hits. She is like one for them, one for you, and she just does so many of them. All right, with shows, Bridgerton has slowed down significantly, but has still managed to hold on to the #1 spot, while 2 new shows, Supercell Season 1 and Worst Roommate Ever Season 2, are right there behind it. Over on iTunes, Furiosa is still #1, a bit of a silver lining for that underperforming film, but it's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare that continues to impress on digital. You know, its box office numbers were so low, I said it couldn't be a new Beekeeper, but this is amazing. Amazon's Young Sherlock Holmes series, also from Guy Ritchie, is looking like a smarter and smarter deal every week. Although why, it's Tiffin Fiends, Rafe Fiennes' nephew or something or whatever, as young Robert Downey Jr. But if only they could somehow convince Robert Downey Jr. and Millie Bobby Brown to let Henry Cavill be Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes as well. Oh, why not? Why not? Oh, that would be great. Henry Cavill is a fantastic Sherlock Holmes in those Millie Bobby Brown movies. But Cavill, this is very good news for him. For his upcoming Highlander film, which is about to start filming relatively soon. I think they said when it's going to start filming. Of course, directed by John Wick's Chad Stahelski. I hope that's a great combo. And also, of course, Cavill's hopes of maybe landing Bond. As I've said, Cavill doesn't have the greatest reputation in the industry of being someone to work with. But, I think you can see that reflected in the lack of opportunities that he's gotten. However, when he's on screen, I think he's pretty magical. So I'm surprised that more producers aren't willing to suck it up and just go work with him and just find a way to make it work. He was amazing in the Mission Impossible film. Why didn't he have an evil twin? All right, can Cavill beat the Superman curse? That's also maybe a play. We'll see. And oh yeah, Mel Gibson still manages to have an audience with another direct-to-digital solid performer, as you can see right here. I don't even think he's the lead, but he still draws an audience in. As for this coming week, we've got a bit of a breather before Twisters and Deadpool and Wolverine hit back-to-back. Why are they back-to-back? That's so stupid. But anyway, this weekend we've got rom-com Fly Me to the Moon, which had several sneak peeks over the holiday weekend. I checked it out. Great film. Review embargo lifts Tuesday, although some of the trades have already published their reviews because I guess they feel it's playing in theaters for the public. They had not 1 but 2 preview showings over the holiday weekend. Which hopefully will help it open big this coming weekend. It's surprisingly good. Also, I know a lot of you think it looks like a fake movie, and it does, but it's really good. Also, Nicolas Cage is back with another crazy horror film, Longlegs. While in limited release, awards season starts to pick up some steam with A24, and they have this early awards contender from the festival circuit last year, but it's only coming out this year, Sing Sing, starring Coleman Domingo, about a maximum security prison trying to put on a musical through a theater program at that prison. The film is based on a true story. Here's where it gets special. And several former inmates who were part of that theater program star, or at least are featured. The trailer looks quite strong, and the reviews so far are stellar. On digital, we've got The Bike Riders, Garfield, and also The Exorcism already, because that wasn't even in the top 10. It's just a total clunker. While streaming movies are Tyler Perry's Divorce in the Black on Prime Video Thursday, and then on Friday, Disney Plus has the latest Descendants movie. They said they were going to put it in a couple of theaters, but I didn't see it listed in any theater, so it looks like maybe they decided against that ultimately. As for shows, as I said, House of the Dragon has their big episode tonight. Well, both The Acolyte and The Boys have their second to last episodes of their seasons this week. The Boys has already been renewed for another season. No word yet on whether or not we're getting The Acolyte season 2. They should be announcing that maybe the same week as the final episode, if they're going to do it. We'll see what happens. I know a lot of you feel they're not going to do it, but I think Camille is a really strong character. I think they might continue with the show. I think some of you said there might have even been already like a soft season 2 pickup. We'll see what happens. All right, so then with new shows, Netflix drops The Boyfriend on July 9th, Japan's first LGBT reality dating show, which is dubbed, it seems. Although I'm sure there's a subtitle option as well. Well, on Wednesday, they have a docuseries about receivers in the NFL. And Thursday, big day for new shows. Seth Rogen's Sausage Party series drops on Prime Video. There's the final season of Vikings Valhalla on Netflix, and Hulu has a docuseries about famed FBI serial killer profiler Dr. Ann Burgess. Then on Friday, Netflix has Exploding Kittens, which sure is named for clicks. And then Apple TV has a superhero show called Me. This is about a middle schooler who realizes he has the power to shapeshift. That's That's an interesting and complex superpower for someone in middle school. We'll see how the show handles it. It seems to be like Heroes, but for kids with a lot of learning opportunities, literally walking in someone else's shoes, etc. We'll see how it does. We'll see if there's an audience, for a Heroes type show in that space, with a show that's clearly meant to be educational over genre-y. We'll see. All right, and that's this. I mean, for those of you who have kids who would be in the audience for that, do you think you guys might tune into that as a family? All right, and that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? Do you think Despicable Me 4 will get close to a billion or close, like the other movies in the franchise? And will any other movies be able to do as well as Inside Out 2 this year? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.